Okay, so good evening, David, and good evening, Ajahn Jeff. Ajahn Jeff, with your permission, I'll perform the introduction for our viewers in Hebrew, then give the floor to David, which will host the session. אז ערב טוב לכולן, לכולם, שמי איתי ארצי. אני מייצג הערב את ארגון בודהיזם בישראל. למי שלא מכירה, בודהיזם בישראל שהוקמה ב-2007 על ידי אבי פאר ואילן לוטנברג, עוסקת בקידום והעלאה של המודעות והחשיפה לתחום הבודהיזם מהמסורות הבודהיסטיות השונות לקהל בישראל. לארגון יש גם הוצאת ספרים מכובדת עם יותר מ-20 כותרים בעברית של ספרי מקור וספרות מתורגמת ועוד כותרים בדרך. לארגון, את הספרים האלה בעצם של הארגון אפשר למצוא באתר אינטרנט שלנו, בודהיזם בישראל, אתם יכולים לחפש בגוגל, לצד מאמרים, הרצאות, קטעי וידאו, אודיו של מרצים, חוקרים ומורים. כל הפעילות הזאת, חשוב להגיד, היא כולה שלא למטרות רווח, היא מנוהלת ומתופעלת על ידי מתנדבים שעוסקים ימים ולילות בתרגום, הפקה והנגשה של התכנים השונים לציבור. אז יש לנו את הכבוד הערב לארח מפגש עם הנזיר המכובד טניסארו בהיקהו או אג'אהן ג'אוף. טניסארו בהיקהו הוא נזיר ממוצא אמריקאי במסורת נזירי היער של תאילנד. מוסמך לנזירות בשנת 1976 על ידי מורו, אג'אהן פואנג ג'וטיקו, מתלמידיו של מאסטר המדיטציה הנודע אג'אהן לי דאמדארו. בשנת 1991 הוא סייע בהקמת מנזר מטה פורסט מונסטרי בסן דייגו, קליפורניה, שהוא עומד בראשו. טניסארו בהיקהו הוא מתרגם פורה של רבים מכתבי הקנון הפאלי ומחברם של ספרים חשובים רבים. And since it's not respectable to speak of a person without him understanding, I'll also introduce Ajahn Jeff in English. Tanisaru Bhikkhu is an American Buddhist monk belonging to the Thai forest tradition. For 10 years he studied under the forest master Ajahn Fuan Jotiko, himself a student of Ajahn Li Dhammadaro. Since 1993, he has served as abbot of the Meta Forest Monastery in San Diego County, California, the first monastery in the Thai forest tradition in the US, which he co-founded with Ajahn Suvat Suvako. So Ajahn Jeff, we are honored to have the opportunity to hear you and practice with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
And a few more words in Hebrew, if I may. את הערב הזה עוזר לי לתפעל מאחורי הקלעים משה בראל היקר. אז תודה רבה על הסיוע, משה. אני עוד כמה רגעים אעביר את ההנחיה של הערב לדוד מקיאס. דוד מקיאס הוא מדריך מדיטציה, הוא תרגם לעברית את הספר עם כל נשימה ונשימה, שכתב טניסארו בהיקהו. דוד מתרגל לפי שיטתו של אג'אהן ג'אוף בשנים האחרונות, כולל תקופה של תרגול שהעביר במנזר היער מטה, שאג'אהן ג'אוף עומד בראשו. ולפני שאני מעביר את השרביט, רק עוד שני עניינים טכניים. הראשון, המפגש מתנהל בשפה האנגלית. לצורך העניין הפעלנו במפגש הזה ערוץ שמע מיוחד, שמאפשר בעצם לשמוע תרגום סימולטני לעברית, תוך כדי שאג'אהן ג'אוף מדבר. אז אם תסתכלו למטה בסטריפ התחתון של הזום, כדי להפעיל את הערוץ הזה, אז אתם מוזמנים, אתם מוזמנות, ללחוץ על האייקון של כדור הארץ, שמתחתיו יש את המילה interpretation, או שיש שם כבר בחירה של שפה, Hebrew English, ובלחיצה על האייקון הזה תוכלו לבחור לשמוע את הערוץ תרגום בעברית או באנגלית. אם תבחרו בעברית, תשמעו בעצם את דוד מתרגם על הרקע של הדיבור של אג'אהן ג'אוף. והעניין השני שחשוב לציין, אג'אהן ג'אוף מתחבר לאירוע דרך חיבור אינטרנט לא כל כך יציב, אז אם לפעמים הוא מתנתק, אנחנו נבקש את סבלנותכם וסבלנותכם. אז כאן תמו דבריי, בכבוד רב, אני מעביר את ההנחיה לדוד. תודה רבה.
אוקיי, שאר אנשים שומעים. אז אולי אג'אהן ג'אוף ינסה להבין, מה שפחות חשוב שהוא ישמע אותי, יותר חשוב שאתם תשמעו אותי כרגע, אז באמת לחשוף את התרגול, לתת הזדמנות להעמיק למי שכבר מתרגל ריכוז ומתרגלים הנשימה, ובאמת אג'אהן ג'אוף הוא הדרך המצוינת לעשות את זה בגלל השילוב המאוד מיוחד שהוא מביא, הלימוד וההבנה העמוקה של הסוטות העתיקות מצד אחד, ומצד שני הניסיון שלו בתרגול המעשי, כן? וגם להביא קצת בהירות או יותר הבנה לגבי נושאים שקשורים לתרגול של ריכוז, תרגול עם הנשימה, בעצם התרגול הכי נפוץ שקיים בקאנון הפאלי, אולי התרגול הכי נפוץ שהבודה לימד, כן? אז אלה הנושאים שאג'אהן ידבר עליהם, כמו ההבדל בין ויפאסנה, אם יש בכלל הבדל בין ויפאסנה לבין שמאתה, זאת אומרת בין תובנה לבין שלווה, והאם תרגול המדיטציה זה משהו אקטיבי שאנחנו עושים, או שמדובר יותר על תהליך של התבוננות. כן, זה חלק מהדברים שהוא ינגע בהם. ואנחנו נתחיל, חשוב להגיד, במיוחד לחבר'ה שהם חדשים לתרגול, עם תרגול מדיטציה שאג'אהן ינחה, שיהיה במשך כ-20 דקות, לאחר מכן לימוד, ואז הוא ישאיר גם זמן לשאלות. אז איתי, אולי בגלל שאג'אהן לא שומע אותי, אתה יכול להודיע לו במקומי שהוא יכול להתחיל את התרגול המונחה.
בהחלט. So, Ajahn Jeff, if you're not hearing David...
I'm hearing now. I'm hearing now.
Okay, so he's invited you to begin the guided meditation.
Okay, fine. Okay, let's start with the guided meditation. Close your eyes and think thoughts of goodwill.
מחשבות של כוונות טובות.
Goodwill is a wish for true happiness, your true happiness and the happiness of others. Because true happiness comes from within, you can have happiness, have goodwill for everyone without any sense of conflict. So start with thoughts of goodwill for yourself. Tell yourself, may I be truly happy. May I understand the causes for true happiness and be willing and able to act on them. And then extend that same thought to others. Start with people who are close to your heart, your family, your very close friends. May they find true happiness too. And then spread that thought out in ever widening circles to people you know well and like. To people you like, even though you don't know them so well. Spread thoughts of goodwill to people you're more neutral about. And to people you don't like. Remember that the world would be a much better place if everyone could find true happiness within. Spread thoughts of goodwill to people you don't even know. And not just people, living beings of all kinds in all directions, east, west, north, south, above and below, out to infinity. May we all find true happiness in our hearts. Now bring attention to the breath. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths, and notice where you feel the breathing process in the body. Focus your attention on the spot where the breath is most obvious. And then ask yourself if long breathing is comfortable. If it is, keep it up. If not, you can change. Try shorter breathing, faster breathing, more shallow. Heavier, lighter. Experiment for a while to see what rhythm and texture of breathing feels best for you right now. If other thoughts come into the mind, just let them go. You don't have to pay them any attention. If you do lose track of the breath, then drop whatever thought pulled you away. And you'll be right back at the breath. Each time you come back to the breath, reward yourself with a breath that feels especially good. That way you feel more and more inclined to want to come back. Now, as the breath gets comfortable, there may be a tendency to leave the breath to focus on the comfort. In which case you would lose the foundation for your content. So to counteract that tendency, the next step is to breathe in and out aware of the whole body. And a good way to build up to that whole body awareness is first to go through the body section by section to notice how the breathing feels in different parts of the body. Start down around the navel. Locate that part of the body in your awareness and watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. If there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. So that no new tension builds up as you breathe in, and you don't hold on to any tension as you breathe out. Now move your attention up to the solar plexus and follow the same 3 steps there. In other words, 1, locate that part of the body in your awareness. 2, watch it for a while and see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. 3, if there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. Now move your attention up to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. Now move your attention to the base of the throat and follow the same steps there. Now bring your attention to the middle of the head. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering not only through the nose, but also through the eyes and the ears. In from the back of the head, down from the top of the head. And as you breathe out, think of the breath energy radiating out from the head in all directions. Dissolving any patterns of tension you may feel in the jaws, the forehead, the back of the neck, and allowing that tension to gradually dissolve away. Now you're welcome to continue to survey the body at your own pace. Down the shoulders, out the arms, down the spine and out the legs. And then begin again at the navel and go through the body again. Keep this up until you're ready to settle down. At which point you can choose any spot in the body that you find most congenial. Allow your attention to settle there. And then to spread out to fill the whole body. So where the whole body breathe in, the whole body breathing out. Allow the breath to follow whatever rhythm is best. Your only duty is to try to maintain this centered but broad awareness. So as you continue meditating, David and I will give the talk. Often we hear that the Buddha taught two meditation methods, tranquility, samatha, and insight, vipassana. But when you look at the early text, you'll find that that's not the case. He taught tranquility and insight as two attributes of the mind that are conducive to awakening. Tranquility is the mind at peace. Insight is liberating understanding of how experience is shaped by the process of fabrication or sankhara. These two attributes are to be developed together through a single method. Using right mindfulness to get the mind into right concentration. Right concentration is defined as the four jhanas, which are states of stable absorption with full body awareness. The Buddha never tells the monks to go do tranquility or go do vipassana. He always tells them to go do jhana. Tranquility and insight are needed to get the mind into jhana. The mind needs to be peaceful, and you have to have insight into the processes by which a state of peace can be fabricated. The Buddha highlights 3 types of fabrication that are involved in jhana. Bodily fabrication, the in and out breath. Verbal fabrication, directed thought and evaluation. Which is the way you talk to yourself. And mental fabrication, which is perceptions or mental labels and feelings. You know, as jhana becomes stronger, tranquility and insight can become stronger as well. To see how this works, we can look at the Buddha's instructions for mindfulness of breathing. These are 16 steps divided into 4 sets of 4 steps called tetrads. The tetrads correspond to the 4 frames of reference for establishing mindfulness. Body, feelings, mind, and mental qualities. The tetrads are not practiced 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Instead, you practice them in parallel. After all, when you're focused on the breath, feelings are right there, the mind is right there, and mental qualities are right there. It's simply a matter of emphasis, which tetrad you'll be focused on at any one time. The first 3 tetrads unit mind together with the breath, with the feeling of pleasure. As they gather more and more snugly, they develop into a quality called ekagata. Which means having a single gathering place or a single dwelling place. This is a central feature of concentration. As for the 4th tetrad, at least at the very beginning of the practice, it's concerned mainly with fending off any distractions that prevent the first 3 frames of reference from gathering into one. That's the tranquility aspect of the concentration. The insight aspect comes in the fact that the instructions keep focusing on the role of fabrication in getting the mind to settle down. How does this work? Let's look at the tetrads one at a time. In the first tetrad, the 4 steps are 1, discerning when the breath is long. 2, discerning when the breath is short. 3, training yourself to breathe in and out sensitive to the whole body. And then 4, training yourself to breathe in and out, calming bodily fabrication. Which, as you remember, is a technical term for the in and out breath. All these steps fall under the body in and of itself as a frame of reference. In the second tetrad, you train yourself to breathe in and out sensitive to rapture or refreshment. Next, to breathe in and out sensitive to pleasure. Next, to breathe in and out sensitive to mental fabrications, feelings, and perceptions. And then to breathe in and out calming bodily fabrications. These steps fall under feelings in and of themselves as a frame of reference. The first step is to breathe in and out sensitive to the state of the mind. The second step is to breathe in and out, gladdening the mind. The third step is to breathe in and out, concentrating the mind. And the fourth step is to breathe in and out, releasing the mind. These steps fall under the mind in and of itself as a frame of reference. The steps in the fourth tetrad are these. First, as you breathe in and out, you focus on inconstancy, anicca, which would also include dukkha and anatta, stress and not self. Then you breathe in and out, focusing on dispassion. Breathe in and out, focusing on cessation. And finally, breathe in and out, focusing on letting go. Steps fall under mental qualities in and of themselves as a frame of reference. Now let's look at how these tetrads get put together in practice. In the first tetrad, the first two steps can include not only short and long breathing, but also fast and slow, deep and shallow, heavy or light. We read in the second tetrad that you will try to breathe sensitive to refreshment and pleasure. So the implication is that you explore variations in the breath to see what ways of breathing induce those feelings. When they're there, you expand your awareness to fill the whole body. And then you let those feelings spread throughout the body as well. First, you energize the body in this way, which would correspond to the step of gladdening the mind in the third tetrad. And then you calm bodily fabrication, in other words, the breathing. The Buddha uses this technical term, bodily fabrication, to stand for the breath, as a way of calling attention to the extent to which you're intentionally shaping the breath and shaping your experience of the body through the breath. As you calm this activity, it will take you through the various levels of jhana until you get the fourth jhana, where the breath seems to grow still. That's looking at what's happening as the mind settles down with the focus on the breath. If you focus on feelings, you first try to energize the body and the mind through developing feelings of rapture, refreshment, and then pleasure. You notice the effect that these feelings and acts of perception or mental labels have on the mind. And then you try to still that effect by making the feelings and perceptions more peaceful. Here again, the Buddha uses the term fabrication to call attention to the extent to which the state of mind is not just a given. You're actually shaping it, and you can learn to shape it in a way that calms things down. With feelings, you let go of the rapture and even the pleasure to arrive at equanimity. This takes you again through the levels of jhana up to the fourth, which is characterized by a feeling of equanimity. As for perceptions, you try to look for more and more peaceful ones. For example, perceptions around the breath. Start with the perception that the breath energy is coming into the body from outside. You can run through the spine, through your internal organs, your arms, your legs, and your head. This can be energizing as it releases patterns of tension. Then you notice that the energy actually originates in the body. So you hold that perception in mind. This allows the breath to become more subtle. Hold in mind the perception that the breath can flow through any blockage. Even more peaceful is the perception that every cell is breathing. With a diffuse attention that doesn't highlight any one part of the body at the expense of others. This allows the breath to grow still without any fear that you're going to be deprived of oxygen. Now, the Buddha's instructions for breath meditation do not mention verbal fabrication. But the instructions themselves are verbal fabrications. This means that with the first two tetrads, you're becoming sensitized to all three types of fabrication. Now, when you focus on the mind in the third tetrad, you see a parallel pattern. First, you go sensitive to the state of the mind to see if it's out of balance and to detect what it needs. If it lacks energy, you can gladden it. This can be done through the way you breathe or through perceptions, other perceptions that you develop. Sometimes as alternatives to the breath, you can think of another inspiring theme. This could be a recollection of the Buddha or your own your own acts of generosity. When the mind is gladdened by these perceptions, then it's ready to be concentrated. And you finally release it from the factors of the lower jhanas and get it into the higher jhanas. Then ideally to get a first glimpse of awakening. That's how the first three tetrads work together to create a sense of singleness in body and mind. Now, the fourth tetrad is there to protect the singleness from getting distracted. It also helps you it helps you in the process of releasing the mind from lower states of concentration and then releasing it from all fabrications. Most of the work in this tetrad is done in the first two steps. Focusing on inconstancy and focusing on dispassion. This is a shorthand version of what is really a 5-step process for giving rise to dispassion. Suppose that a feeling of anger comes up in the course of your meditation. The first two steps in giving rise to dispassion for the anger are to notice how it comes and how it goes. The Buddha uses the word origination to describe the coming. This means more than just the fact that it arises. Pause for its arising, and particularly when it's to look for the cause within the mind. For example, if you're angry at someone what someone in your family has done, you don't look for the cause in that person's actions. You look for it in the attitude in your own mind that feels that anger is an appropriate response. Then you look to see how the anger goes away when that internal cause ceases. Now, it often happens that the anger will come back. That's when you look for the third step, which is to look for its allure. Why do you find the anger attractive? What's its appeal? Part of the mind may not like it, but there must be a part that does. This is where it's useful to imagine the mind as being like a committee. Lots of different members, lots of different opinions. To see the advice that the mind be very still. It's because the part of the mind that likes things like anger often likes to hide itself. Most of the mind is becoming from a sense of pleasure where it's less hungry for sensual pleasure. So be more willing to admit how stupid the allure is and to let it go. These are some of the reasons for why concentration is necessary for this analysis to work. We come to see that the allure is made up of the three kinds of fabrication, especially perception and feeling. The experience you've gained in breath meditation for seeing fabrications will help you here as well. When you see the allure, the fourth step is to look at the drawbacks of that anger. Because the allure is made up mostly of perception to counteract it. This is where you can bring in the perceptions of inconstancy, stress, and not self to deal with your defilements. In the case of anger, you can also hold in mind the perception of the stupid things you've done under the power of anger in the past. And these perceptions are value judgments to remind you that there are better ways of finding happiness and satisfaction in life. When the drawbacks really hit home, that's when you develop dispassion. That's the fifth step in this 5-step process, and the second step in the fourth tetrad. That's the escape. Now, when there's dispassion, there is no more passion to drive the fabrication of that particular case of anger. As a result, it ceases, and then you can relinquish the whole issue. That's how the fourth tetrad protects your concentration through insight. Ultimately, as you get better and better at fending off distractions, you can turn the same 5-step analysis on concentration and even the insight itself. That's when the mind is totally freed. So that's how the practice of right mindfulness and right concentration can give rise both to tranquility and insight. As you approach the skill of getting the mind to see, you do it in such a way that you become sensitive to how the mind fabricates sensory experience. You then can apply this insight not only to states of concentration, but also to any state of mind. This allows insight to see more sharply. As insight improves, it protects the mind from subtler and subtler disturbances and distractions. Until it can eventually even free itself from fabrications of the path. That's when the mind is totally free and it can experience the deathless, which is what the practice is all about. Now, that may sound like a lot to remember. But fortunately, you don't have to keep it in mind all the time. When you focus on the breath, give all your attention to the breath. It's only when problems come up in the practice that it's good to have this framework in the back of your mind. Which is where, go ahead. Which is why we're recording this. So those are my thoughts this evening. I wonder if you have any questions. David, I have my my Zoom tuned into the Hebrew interpretation. So if there's any questions in English, you'll just have to repeat them for me. I can hear you, yes. they ask in Hebrew, you have to translate, right?
David, you can just open both mics, both of the translation and the other channel, and then we'll hear both of them at the same time.
It's like, yeah.
לא בטוח איך לעשות את זה, איתי? אג'אהן ג'אוף אומר, ים, האם זה אתה? זה בגלל שיש נזיר ישראלי במנזר היער מתה שקוראים לו ים, תן-ים. אוקיי. איתי, אם אתה שומע אותי, אני לא בטוח איך אני פותח את שני התרגומים, אז לדעתי בואו ניתן לאנשים שרוצים לשאול באנגלית לשאול, ואני אוכל לתרגם את הדברים או את התשובה של אג'אהן ג'אוף בערוץ של העברית.
אז מי שרוצה לשאול, מאחר שהמיקרופונים מושתקים, בבקשה להרים יד, ואנחנו נפתח לו את המיקרופון. כן, אבי, בבקשה.
דוד, אתה שומע אותי? אג'אהן ג'אוף, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll ask in Hebrew because I want to be more precise with my Hebrew that is better than English, and the excellent translation of David will do the work. I would like you to, עברית, sorry. אני אבקש אם תוכל להתייחס מה קורה כאשר אנחנו מנסים להעביר את הלימוד שלך, ואני זוכר את עצמי מתעמק בו ומסתבך בו, כשקראתי ועבדתי בזמן נגיד ריטריטים.
No, I can't hear.
Okay. Ajan Jeff, you can switch to the Hebrew, so I'll translate Avi's question.
Yes.
Okay.
When I try to go through your instructions, your books, for example, when I was in the Gaia house in a retreat, it was okay because I felt that I had all the time in the world to mix up with myself and allow myself to be very confused, which is one of the best mental states that I can recall. But when I try to moderate, transfer the teaching that you give to people that doesn't have the time to be in retreat. Can you give a different kind maybe of instructions when the time is limited, when people have only 2 hours once a week and they practice, I don't know, a couple of minutes every day?
Usually I would teach like I did in the guided meditation at the beginning of this Zoom broadcast. In other words, get people to breathe in a way that's comfortable and then try to explore the breathing sensations in the body. And for people who are work hard and use their minds a lot, it's really good to get out of their head and down into the body like this. And I found that it doesn't take a lot of time to do that, and it's immediately refreshing. So that would be the aspect that I emphasize most for someone who has a very busy lifestyle.
And another question, if you mind, can you give the key factor that defines mindfulness as a brand, as a Mac Buddhism, if I can call it, in which the reason why I'm practicing is to make my life easier in this stressful environment, into the state of mind of freeing the mind.
Okay, you have to remember the Buddha defined mindfulness not as non-reactive awareness. He defined it as a factor of your memory. In other words, there are certain things that you try to keep in mind as you focus on the breath. And one of the things you want to keep in mind is that issue that I talked about this evening, which is the extent to which you are fabricating your experience. And so remind yourself, whenever there's suffering, you remind yourself there must be something I'm doing to fabricate this in the wrong way. I can fabricate it in another way. How am I breathing? How am I talking to myself? What are the perceptions I'm holding in mind? And you begin to realize that you have more freedom in the present moment than you might have thought. That way you get the mind focused on what it is doing rather than what the world is doing. And it's in that focus that you actually can do some liberating work on the mind. That's about as short as I can make it.
Yeah. Thank you. דוד, יש עוד שאלות? 3 אנשים.
בבקשה, אני מחכה שאיתי ייתן להם את רשות הדיבור. איתי?
משה, אתה יכול לתת בבקשה?
לא, אני לא מצליח. הנה הוא הצליח. מיכאל?
כן, אני לא מבין את משמעות החיים בלי תשוקה ובלי רצון.
אג'אהן ג'אוף,
אני מבין את מהות הפבריקציה. אני מבין את מהות הסבל שאני גורם לעצמי, אבל לוותר על תשוקה ועל רצון אני לא מבין.
אג'אהן ג'אוף, מייקל or Michael is asking, I can understand fabrication and I can understand the suffering I'm causing myself, but I don't understand...
בערוץ השני, דוד.
Now I can, yes. Okay, first of all, you have to develop passion for the path. And from that, in other words, see this as a skill that you want to develop and what you want to develop to at a high level. And you realize that if you have passion for things that pull you away from the path, it's going to be dangerous. Which is why the Buddha teaches the three perceptions of inconstancy, stress, and not self. So that you see that whatever else it is that you have passion for is really not worth it. So you maintain your passion for the path. Until it leads you to a happiness that doesn't require passion. Because most of the pleasures we have in life are things that we have to keep constructing and maintaining. Which is why we tend to associate passion with pleasure, because we have to be passionate about it in order for it to be pleasant. Whereas nirvana does not require any maintenance. So you can have all that pleasure without any passion, without any need for passion. And meanwhile, as you continue to live in the world with other people, your motivation for dealing with them turns from passion to compassion. Because you see that they don't have that pleasure that you have. So that's how you live without passion. You have happiness that doesn't need passion in order to maintain it. And you cannot help but be compassionate for people who don't have that happiness. And John Mahabua, one of the teachers of the Forest tradition, once said that if you could take nirvana out and show it to everybody, no one would want anything else. Oh. Does that answer your question?
הייתי מסביר משהו לעולם הבא, אני יודע. כן, זה עונה. האם יש הבדל בין רצון לתשוקה?
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, you can will things, you can want things to happen, but you can want it without passion. Because for most of us, passion means that you're trying to feed off a certain outcome. Whereas an awakened person doesn't have to feed off of anything. So an awakened person can still create fabrications for the sake of other people. But their own needs for happiness have been taken care of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
אם למישהו יש עוד שאלה, הוא יכול פשוט לפתוח את המיקרופון ולשאול.
So, can you hear me, Ajahn?
Very, very, very faintly.
Very badly.
This is very
so
faint.
I'll try to ask, and hopefully you'll hear enough of it. Okay. So thank you, Ajahn, for the teaching and for this event. And I have a question about what you said about exploring or focusing on the allure that keeps certain fabrications around or certain mental habits, and so and about developing seeing the drawbacks of that allure. So I was wondering if you could say a bit more about that, about, you know, certain maybe certain pointers of seeing those drawbacks of developing that dispassion to certain fabrications.
Okay, first, just to see the allure, sometimes that's the harder part because there's a part of the mind that likes to hide these things from itself. For example, with anger, part of you may say, well, that what the other person did really was very bad. But there may be part of the mind that enjoys anger because you get to say and do things that ordinarily you would be ashamed to do. In other words, when you're angry, there's a sense of power and there's a sense of freedom. But then, of course, the drawbacks are you look at the things that you do under the power of anger, and many times you regret them very much afterwards. But traditionally, they talk about how the Buddha says the antidote for anger is goodwill. But there are also cases where the Buddha says, you know, if you can't feel goodwill for the other person, just remind yourself that if you act on anger, you're going to please the other person because you're going to do something stupid. And do you want to please that person? So in that case, you're using spite in order to overcome anger. So it may not be the most skillful thing, but at least it can be very effective. Similarly with lust, oftentimes it's not the other person that you're lusting for, but you're lusting for a certain image, either of yourself or a certain narrative story that you like to tell about yourself. Which is why I said that when you're looking for the allure, always look for the perception. What's the image that's in the back of your mind when when you give into a particular defilement. For example, often when you're in love with someone, you're not really in love with that person, you're in love with an image associated with that person. Which is why sometimes relationships are not the way you expect them to go. So the Buddha always said it's always important to notice where is the location of your craving actually, and it may not be where you think it is. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn.
Is there a time for another question?
David, I think not. I'm not sure. We have a few minutes. If it's a short question, please.
Okay.
Short question, short answer.
Okay. I'll try to keep it short. I'm on the right channel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can hear you.
So I think you mentioned something about it in your talk. I feel that the more that I get more fruits and advance on the path, the more I see how most other people are so confused, right? And then I think when it comes to people that are not close to me, then I try to develop equanimity. But when it's people that are close to me, especially family members, then there's a part of me that doesn't want to just see the shipwreck happening and tries to help, but then I always find myself ending up like a preacher, you know, to people that are not really interested in hearing that their ship is going into an iceberg, right? So yeah, I guess that's a question.
Okay, this is a case where you have to keep looking for the right time and the right place. You know, the Buddha said it's important that your words be truthful, beneficial, and timely. And for us in the West, oftentimes looking for the right time and place is the hardest thing. We're not that used to it. We don't have the patience to say, well, maybe they will give us an opening where you can say something. David, do you want to translate? In which case you have to look for the right time and place. In my own case, my father was not happy that I was a Buddhist, but there were times when I had to see that, you know, he needed some Buddhist advice. Number one, I never mentioned Buddhism to him. And then two, I found the most effective way of getting a message across was to ask him questions, sometimes questions he might not have thought of before. Because when you ask questions, that leaves the other person free to start thinking and coming to the better conclusion. So see if that helps.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Also prepare a few lifeboats for when the crash does come. Okay, I hope that's...
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
אם כולם יוכלו בבקשה, כל הצופים לעבור, צופים וצופות, בבקשה לעבור לצ'אנל באנגלית. Please turn to the English channel so everyone can hear David now for the closing words.
And so first of all, just a few words in English. Thank you very much, Tanajan, for this evening, and I hope it's been a beneficial one for everybody. And since you mentioned Taniyam earlier, I thought about sending a collective best wishes from all of us to Taniyam, and we're rooting for him. May he find Nibbana sooner than later.
Okay. May you all be well. May you all be well. I hope, as I said, I hope this has been helpful. Take care.
יופי. אז חשבתי לסיים עם בדיחה, זאת הסיבה שהזכרתי את הנזיר ים שנמצא שם במנזר היער במטה בקליפורניה. יצא לי לפגוש אותו לתקופה שהייתי שם, וככה לא ראיתי אותו לאחרונה בתמונות שלפעמים עולות בפייסבוק מהמנזר, אז שמחתי לשמוע את אג'אהן ג'אוף מזכיר אותו, ואני מקווה שהתרגול שלו מתקדם ופורה. איתי, אתה תרצה להגיד דברים נוספים הערב?
רגע, אני אוסיף את עצמי גם, כן. קודם כל, אני אשמח, אנחנו דיברנו כאן על הספר דוד, אם תוכל להגיד שתי מילים עליו.
כן.
איפה אפשר לרכוש אותו, איפה אפשר בעצם להזמין אותו בעצם, כי הספר עצמו ניתן בדנה, כן, בבקשה.
כן, במקרה הכנתי לי עותק של הספר, כאן לידי. זה ספר שתרגמתי לאחרונה, זה ספר מדיטציה שאג'אהן ג'אוף הוציא מתישהו בשנות ה-2000, ובעצם השיחה שהוא נתן היום היא בעצם חלק מהתרגול שמוצע בספר הזה. הספר מציע את התרגול של מדיטציית נשימה, כפי שהיא מוצגת בקאנון הפאלי, כפי שאג'אהן ג'אוף למד אותה מהמורים שלו, אג'אהן פואנג, אג'אהן לי, והוא כל כך הועיל לי רבות, שחשבתי שזה יהיה מעשה טוב לתרגם אותו לעברית ולהציע אותו, כן, כדנה לאנשים. באמת לשמחתי מספיק תלמידים ואנשים שאת חלקם אני רואה פה היום, כן, תמכו בספר, וככה הוא יצא לאור. יש עדיין עותקים שהם גם בקובץ דיגיטלי וגם ספר שהוא מוחשי, אז אני אשים את המייל שלי בצ'אט, ומי שרוצה עותק מוזמן פשוט לשלוח לי מייל ונעשה את זה, בין אם מדובר עם עותק דיגיטלי או עותק פיזי, כן, זו גם אפשרות.
נהדר. אני אשמח גם להעלות לפני שאנחנו מסיימים, כמו שהזכרתי בהתחלה, המפגש הזה והפעילויות שאנחנו מקיימים בבודהיזם בישראל, הן כולן מתבצעות בהתנדבות על ידי אנשים ונשים שעובדים יום ולילה כדי להביא תכנים, לתרגם ספרים, לתרגם מאמרים, להפיק תכנים, וגם המפגש הזה בוצע כולו בהתנדבות. גם אג'אהן ג'אוף הגיע לכאן בהתנדבות, וכמו שאתם רואים הספר שדוד כרגע תרגם, גם הוא מוצע בדנה. ואני מזמין אתכם ואתכן, גם אתם, לפתוח את הלב ולתת מתנה גם לעצמכם, על ידי זה לתת בעצם ולתרום לפעילות הזאת וליכולת שלנו להמשיך את הפעילות הזאת, ואפשר בעצם לתרום בעמוד הזה של הכניסה למפגש שנכנסתם בו, אפשר בעצם ללחוץ על אותו קישור של הכניסה למפגש. כל אחד לפי יכולתו ובהתאם לרוחב הלב. אז דוד, תודה רבה.
כן, איתי, אני...
של המפגש הזה.
בשמחה, זה תרגול מאוד חזק של נדיבות בשבילי, אני שמח להעביר אותו הלאה. אני אגיד עוד גם משהו אחרון, ואני אשחרר את כולנו לישון או למדות. שלחתי קודם כל שוב פעם בצ'אט גם את המייל שלי, וגם שלחתי קישור לעמוד שבו אפשר לתרום גם למנזר היער של טניסארו. אז מי שמרגיש או מרגישה שהיא רוצה לתרגל נדיבות יכולה גם להיכנס לשם ולתרום. תודה, איתי ששלחת גם את המייל שלי. ומשהו אחרון זה שיש עוד ספרים שכבר מתורגמים. עוד ספרים של מורים של אג'אהן ג'אוף שתרגמתי לעברית. ספציפית של אג'אהן פואנג שהיה המורה הישיר שלו, אבל גם של אג'אהן לי, שהוא מורה מאוד גדול במסורת היער התאילנדית, שבעצם בישל את הטכניקות האלו, כן? והוא אולי לא היה הראשון, אבל בהחלט הוא עשה דברים מאוד יפים של לתרגם כתבים לטכניקות פרקטיות שאפשר להשתמש בהם כדי לאמן את התודעה. אז גם ספר של אג'אהן לי, וגם ספר של אג'אהן צ'ה, חבר'ה פה שבפורום בפייסבוק קראו חלק מהקטעים שאני מעלה, אחת לכמה זמן, אז כל הספרים האלה כבר מוכנים, ואם מישהו רוצה לעזור בעריכה לשונית או בהגעה של הספרים האלה, שיוצאו כמובן בדנה, אז הוא מוזמן או היא מוזמנת לשלוח לי מייל, ואני אשמח to get you on board.
איזה יופי.
כן, ומקווה שהפקתם תועלת. כיף לראות הרבה אנשים שאני מכיר פה בקהל.
אז תודה לכולם, כולן.
תודה רבה, תודה.
תודה רבה.
טוב.
תודה דוד.
תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.
תודה.
דוד יש לי...
תודה רבה. תודה רבה.